Hello, my name is Richard. I'm from Premier Partnership. I just want to take a few minutes of your time just to go through the NG2 risk assessment for the NEBOSH General Certificate course. So this can be a relatively easy exam process if you know what you're doing. Like most things, if you know what you're doing, it makes it a bit easier. So what we'll do is we'll go through an example risk assessment, look at the marking criteria, and also just go through some common pitfalls, common errors, common issues that some delegates have and that's led to them being referred. So what I want you to remember, this is not scored in any way. So unlike the written exam, which is scored, this is a straight pass or refer. So you need to make sure you get everything absolutely perfect to make sure your marker has absolutely no reason but to pass you. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. This won't be a very long video, but hopefully it'll help you once you've completed your NG2. Just have a look through this video, then maybe just review your assessment before you submit it, just to make sure you're just happy with what you're submitting. Okay, so I thought what I'd do first of all is we would look at the markers marking criteria. So this is your part of your NG2 email you would have received from the health and safety team. So this, it is what it says on the tin. Really, it says exactly what we need to learn from doing the risk assessments. This is the marking criteria. So the marker will literally use this list to go through and tick, or so it would be met or not met. So they'll tick or cross where they feel you've met these white lines. So the blue lines are the sections, and the white lines are what they're marking you on. So if we look here, we go down basically these are the sections of your risk assessment. So if we go to that, go to our example one. So that'd be here. So we've got, as you can see here, look, they do marry up with the marking guides, name the organization, site location, number of workers, etc. So basically, these would give us an indication from the marking guide what we need to put in this area. So what I'll do is I'll go through line by line what needs to be on here, and then we'll refer to the marking guide throughout. Okay. So this is an example one that I did. I just threw it together. Just based off my knowledge and experience from looking at a lot of the feedback, talking to our tutors, and also completing the course myself. So we've got here Premier Partnership, name of the organization. This is our address in Doncaster. Number of workers for the whole organization is 50. A little bit ambiguous information from NEBOSH about what we need to put in here. So if you work for a huge organization which has got 50,000 staff that work for it, but you're only risk assessing, say, one building that has 50 people work there, it's a little bit unclear of what they're looking for. I would recommend, if you're not sure, put both in there and just explain yourself. You can't be referred for putting too much information in, but you can be referred for not putting enough. So I'll probably repeat that in a very tedious fashion throughout. So general description of the organization. This doesn't have to be war and peace. This is literally just to explain what your company does. So Premier Partnership is a trading company located in Doncaster. It's part of a building split to 3 units. Premier Partnership occupies one of these units. There's 50 office employees and 2 cleaners. The company organizes delivers training to multiple clients across various business sectors such as L&D, health and safety, and as you can see, this is not complete. The office staff use the office Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. till 5:30 a.m. and the cleaners until 6 each day. And a key holder would stay until they are finished and would set the alarm and lock up behind them. So that pretty much explains in a nutshell what we do. That's probably the minimum that you should do there. So you can explain things a little bit further, maybe some of the actions, what you do, different activities that your business does if there's multiple things that you do, but this is probably the minimum that you should be doing. The key thing that you need to look at as well is making sure that you include everyone's shift patterns, because that's one of the key areas here. So we've got name of the organization, site location, how many workers are employed, tick, 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 we're happy with that. Products, manufacturers, services provided, types of activities, and shift patterns, tick. Okay, so, I mean, what you could also put in here is where it's under types of activities. You could basically say, primarily the company is a lot of sort of administration work, sales related stuff, IT. Well, you could go into more detail on that if you really want, but like I said, this is the bare minimum you should aim for. Okay, description of the area risk assessed. Again, this doesn't have to be war and peace. This basically, so what you need to do is you need to choose a section of your organization, I would try and keep this a smaller area as if you work on a huge site with 17 buildings and it's just massive amounts of different areas, like it could be like a manufacturing place or something like that. I would try and keep it somewhere a little bit smaller. Don't try and do everything because you're making it just a huge job for yourself. Maybe choose one office or one building that's got maybe 2 floors and a car park, that kind of thing. Try and keep it simple. Try and keep it to understand, because you have to remember the marker doesn't work where you work. They don't work for your organization. So you need to be very clear as well. If it's a very, very unique environment, that you explain it fully so the marker can understand. So this is the area, this is the box where you would put as much information as you can in without going overboard. Okay, Unit 3 is 25,000 square feet, used by teams who book training courses for clients. There's also a kitchen, toilet in this unit separated by a fire door. The office is a lunchroom, server room, boardroom, 2 directors' office. The office is a large fire exit, the side of the building, the main entrance reception area. This area is separated by a security door that uses an ID system. This door automatically unlocks and the fire alarm is activated, and another means of evacuation. You can see here I've again reiterated this information. I wouldn't say I need to do that because it already says it there, so we'll ignore that. And then you could also go into more detail if you wanted to about fire call points and just describing these areas a little bit better. Maybe how many desks there are in key areas. What's the server room? It's got 2 large servers and it's got aircon in two areas. So you could put more information if you want. Basically, what you're aiming for is this should be really the bare minimum, is just so the mark can get a decent idea of what it looks like. Also, this needs information about the car park as well. So to add to this, I would say there's a car park, clearly defined pedestrian and parking areas with enough parking for say 30 cars, and then that would probably close that off. So I would be happy with it. So I would take this out because I've already got it, and I would put something in there about the car park. Early relevant information. This could be anything you think that the marker may find relevant. So Premier Partnership has a strong health and safety culture. 2 of the 4 directors are former NEBOSH tutors and IOSH chartered members. So health and safety is a key talking point for all business updates and meetings. Staff are working hybrid working with only 2 days in the office. That has changed a little bit, as with most people. When one last did that, I think people are doing maybe sort of 3, 4, 5 days in the office now, with the exception of IT, line managers, and reception staff. So again, it's not essential information. That could even go in this box here, but I chose to put it in there. Okay. So that's pretty much it. So part 1 is relatively easy. You just need to make sure you hit all of these key information here. All right. So the last part of part 1 is we're going to look at what information we looked at. So the reason for this is anyone could just walk around an area and say, yeah, that's pretty safe, that. But what the marker's not looking for that. As per the course syllabus that you've attended, you understand now that there's a larger scope, especially for risk assessments, what information we should be looking at. So there's 4 things in consultation we should be looking at: who we're speaking to, what information we're looking at, what we can see, and a variety of like minutiae little information that we could look at. Okay, it actually helps you quite a bit here, these 3 bullet points. So basically what it's looking for is you to show that you understand as a larger scope what we should be looking at as a risk assessment. Ignore these word counts. As far as I'm aware, it says they should aim for. So if you go over 200 words, no one's going to refer you. This is just to give you an indication. So don't stress out about word counts too much. Okay, so what I've talked about here is consulted health and safety minutes meeting, conversations with company directors, line managers, HR, discuss health and safety concerns. If current control measures have been effective, any issues, speak to disciplined staff for doing stuff they shouldn't do, correct health and safety procedure, also consult common issues with fire wardens, checked fire warden meetings, accident book, near miss report. So that would be what I would expect, maybe to be a little bit more about the car park. Carry out a dynamic risk assessment. So that would be you walk around and see what you can see. So here, we've already ticked off a lot of information here. So we've spoken to quite a lot of people. We've looked at some information, and we've also had a walk around as well to see what we can see while we're there. Consulted the health and safety policy, 45,001 audits, non-conformance reports to see if existing measures are suitable. So basically, we're looking at what we say we're doing, and actually, are we doing that by looking at all this information? So if it says in the policy and the audits that we do one thing, but then the accident records show that we've had loads of accidents attributed to something that we think's fully controlled, then it's not, is it? So that's what we're looking at. I've checked the date of the last general risk assessment and the fire warden risk assessment have been carried out. Fire wardens, first aiders are trained. So we're looking at all this information to try and to get a better picture of what we're looking for. And then I've just listed a few things as well, sort of information that I've used to decide some of the information in part two. So what the marker's looking for is, okay, so you in part two you've advised what the current control measures are, and you've advised additional ones. How have you come to that information? What sources of information did you look at to determine that they need extra controls there? So basically what we're saying here is we looked at all this information, so now we're confident further controls in part two are relevant. So that's what you need to be looking at. Okay. So part two is the area where people most fall down. So it's part two and part three where people struggle the most. So I thought we'd focus on these quite a little bit. So we've got here just some hazards that I've thrown in. Try and keep your hazards nice and low, because they're easy to control, and also you have to remember this is not a real risk assessment. There's no integrity issue. It's an exam. So we want to make it as nice and easy for ourselves as we possibly can. And the more complicated we make it, the more we're opening ourselves up to the marker to maybe not understand what we're saying, or just refer us for some reason like that, really. So, okay. So the next one, manual handling. So this first column is really, really important. It basically needs to be a very short, snappy, clear hazard label. If you start talking about risks or injuries or anything like that, they're going to refer you straight away. This needs to be very clear and snappy. So I'll reiterate that as we look at each one. I've not done the full required amount because this is just to show you what to do, but you need to do a certain amount, but we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so the label is carrying boxes of course materials from the office area to the reception area incorrectly. That's it. That's all we want for that. A nice clear label, just so we know what the problem is. I would make a nice little, so it says who will, that's that again, who might be harmed and how. Who? Staff. So basically, you wouldn't expect visitors or contractors to be carrying stuff around. It's really just staff that we need to be worried about. I haven't put a lot of information in here as to explain myself. So you could say reception, staff, carrying boxes instead of using the sack truck. He just explains it a little bit further. So if this is not very clear, this area here is where you would explain it, despite my terrible typing because I'm recording this. So you would just explain there. So you can also say receptionist has a bad back, so carrying items would only make this worse, etc. Yeah, blah blah blah. So how? So all the information about how someone could be hurt, what the key details is to what the hazard is, what the risk is, would all go in column two, not column one. So column one should be a nice clear label. Column two, again, we don't care about any risk, any sort of word counts or anything like that. Just put as much information as you want to. So you would there, who's going to be hurt, a little bit of information about what the actual risk is, and then how should be a list of different types of injuries. So there you've got there, look. Okay, so what you're currently doing. Okay, so this basically we're giving them information that's being ignored probably for ease of use. Receptionists or other members of staff can't be bothered to go and get the sack truck, so they just lift the boxes anyway. And they've been caught doing that. They've been seen doing that. So we've put additional controls in. What I've done here, as you can see, is I've numbered them across all three of these last three columns. I suggest you do this just so when you upload it, if it throws the formatting out, it's still going to make sense. So staff not received any form of training to use the trolley correctly. Staff to be given additional training, demonstrate the correct use of the trolley, not to overload, i.e. not to overload, be aware of the environment, etc. So it's all tile as part of the course. You will know that now. So you've got one, then action 1 month, and then one. Who's going to do that? So we've got David Pearson, Health and Safety Director, and me, Health and Safety Lead. So we're going to do that. So that's an agreed action that we've got. It tallies across. The timescales needs to be really clear as well. You can't just put things like immediately or we'll do that quarterly or things like that. So I will explain that a little bit further, but that's where people fell down. You need to just put a timescale in there. So I'm saying we're gonna provide training to everyone, and we're going to do it in a month. Yeah. So as we're saying, basically, the timescales need to be an actual timescale. So if you're saying, oh, we're going to put a new process in, so for people to monitor the receptionist carrying boxes around just to make sure that she's actually doing what she should be doing. Some people might put, we'll do that quarterly in the time scale or weekly. That's not what NEBOSH are looking for. Because what you're doing there is you're not sort of deciding, you're not promising to do that as an action plan. What you're doing is you're setting a process up. So the process would be key people will be instructed to monitor people carrying things around the office. And how long will that take to set that process up? A week. And that is it. So you would put in this area here, staff to be, new process to be set up for this to be monitored by key members of staff, maybe line managers, as part of their daily jobs. And then you would put the time scale 1 week, because you're setting up a process. You're not the one doing the quarterly checks. Well, you may be, but that's the process is being set up, not the sort of the promise to do that. That's if you know what I mean. So these timescales, if it's an immediate, so say someone's blocked a fire door with like a pallet of paper or something, you would think the timescale would be to immediately move that. So move that out of the way immediately. For some reason, NEBOSH lately have got a bit of an issue with that, so just put 1 day. All right. Okay, so next one is electricity. So again, nice clear hazard label. Staff bringing in their own heaters, devices, and chargers that are not pat tested. That's it. So it's very, very clear. Again, we could put more information in here. All staff, contractors, and visitors, because so people could be bringing in these sort of cheap Chinese manufactured, iPad chargers or Samsung chargers from eBay that you can get that are like £2 and they last like 5 minutes and they can potentially set on fire. So everything needs to be pat tested that's brought into the office to make sure that people don't get electrocuted. Okay, so who? All staff, contractors, and visitors. Electrical burns, electrical shock, and death. This could also potentially start a fire. See, I don't know why I put that in there because we're talking about electricity, so I would stick to electricity. I wouldn't really start talking about other hazards. If I was, I would need to create a separate line and start talking about it being a fire hazard as well. We're not going to do that though, because we like to vary them up. Okay. So what we're currently doing. Okay, so our new actions, again, we're numbering them across for who's responsible for what, as you can see. So this will be on Moodle for you to download this example. So I'm not going to read everything, but you can have a good look through it, what the different ones are. So again, you'll see the timescales: 1 month, 1 month, 1 week. We're not saying, oh, we'll do that every 3 months or anything like that, because we're setting up a process, or we're doing something, and then we're deciding how long it's going to take us to set up. That's how it works. Okay, that just goes another example for electricity. So while I think it might be a good time to explain about how the hazards work. So this is on Moodle as one of the things you can see, but I just want to refer to it just to get any sort of clarity, because NEBOSH label these in really weird ways. So basically, these here are the hazard categories. So, and then here are the elements of the course, 5, 6, 7 to 11. So on the second week of the course, those are your hazard categories. So it would be 10 of these from a minimum of 5 elements. They confuse it by labeling in the way that they do. But if you read here, look, for avoidance of doubt, hazard categories for the assessment are the topic headings for elements 5 to 11. So it clearly says it there. So this is on Moodle for you to refer to. But so what you could do is you could do noise, mental ill health. So that's 2 from 1. Then if you did hazardous substances, that's 3 from 2. So that's 3 hazards from 3 elements. And then you could do fire. So that's 4 hazards from 4. And you could do that. And then you could go back and you could do manual handling. So basically, I would recommend you do more than because it says at least 10 from 5. I would recommend you do sort of 12 from 6 or even more if you wanted to, just in case the marker doesn't like one. He puts a big red line through it. You've still got some more to fall back on. But this is really, really important. If you don't understand this, you're not going to pass, basically. So you need to just get that in your head that you need 10 of these from 5 of these different elements or more. Okay, I hope that's helped a little bit. Okay, so we'll talk at this again. So we'll look at a couple more of these. Electricity, staff using a sandwich toaster in the kitchen brought from home with an exposed wire. So that's not actually a real thing. I just made that up. No one actually did that. So this is just something that I've made up, which you can do. Again, it's an exam. It's not a real risk assessment that people are going to use to keep people safe in the workplace. It's for a marker to look at to show for where you can demonstrate you understand the course syllabus. So you can just make them up if you need to, as long as everything, all these following corresponding columns make sense in the real world. So if you actually saw that in your job, who could be harmed? These people, they're in the kitchen. You know, there's a lot of traffic in kitchens, so you could have a contractor come in there, make yourself a cup of tea, or a visitor. How? Again, I would take this out. I would explain. I would always put a little comment in here about a little bit more about it. What we're doing, some key actions, some clear timescales, and then who's responsible for these actions. Okay, so we'll look at a couple more. Slips and trips. This is a real one. So there was I think it was a truck or something that damaged the curb outside, and people kept tripping a little bit on it. They were very, very slight issue, but it was a matter of time until someone actually did fall really badly and hurt themselves. So damaged curb outside the main office. All staff, visitors, and contractors. In there, you could put general public. Let's not forget about them. So how bad would that be if you had, a small child fall, trip, hit their face on the floor or the head, or maybe even a pregnant woman or an old lady or an old man who'd fall and really severely hurt themselves. That's our responsibility to make sure that area near our building is safe. So that would have been us that would have been liable for that because we'd not done anything about it. Okay, so who? So again, you could put information in here about how you feel that could have been caused. Start falling. It does mention the root cause of it here actually, so you could put that in here. Then there's a list of injuries. What's currently been doing. Then what additional things to do is a root cause expected to be caused by a delivery driver hitting it with the curb. Operations director should contact the delivery company to try and stop this from happening again. Just report the driver. Just make an effort to try and stop that. And then it goes on. So again, this will be on Moodle for you to download and have a good look at. Don't be copy and pasting things from it though, because if you all do that, you'll show up on plagiarism software. NEBOSH are very clear that they run everything through a software that will pick up on plagiarism. So if you're all just copy and pasting things from this example one that I provided, that's going to show up. I'm sure things like this and this won't be picked up. If you just copy and paste that and put it into yours, somebody else might do that as well, and then you'll get accused of copying each other. So don't do that. Okay, so yeah, from this point now, you should have 12 from 6, so 12 hazards from 6 elements, or maybe even more. And then we're going to move on. So as long as you follow those key things, nice clear label, who's going to be harmed, a little bit of information about it, and then a list of injuries, what you're currently doing, and then you just think. Good way to think about it is your hierarchy of control. If you've got a hazard, when you're doing your further controls, think about that. So, can it be eliminated? No, it can't be. So we can't do anything about that. Do you know, can we change a process? Can we add a process? Can we monitor it to make sure that people are actually, doing that what they said they're going to be doing in the future? If it's a cultural thing or a behavioral thing where people are doing something they shouldn't be doing, then you need to put them. Basically, they need to be reprimanded or it needs to be communicated to staff that's not acceptable, and then it needs to be monitored. So these are just some of the additional actions you can do. There's always something you can do to try and reduce the risk as much as humanly possible. If you've already got a hazard, but you're already doing some incredible things to control it, you can't think of anything else, then I would suggest you just try and find a different hazard and move on. Okay, so part 3 is probably the most difficult part, what people struggle with. But if I go through it now, break it down for you about what the marker's actually looking for, that should be pretty easy. But before we do that, let's just check part 2. Okay, so minimum of 10 hazards. Have we done that? Tick. Okay, have we done that at least from 5 hazard categories or elements, if we're going to be a bit more clear? Tick. Each column of the risk assessment table has been completed for each of the identified hazards. So basically, if you were to put, for one of your hazards, if you put 6 additional control methods, but you've only put 5 timescales in, you're going to fail. So you just need to make sure that they're all completed and they're all done. It looks easy, but it's easier to refer on this than it is to pass it just by doing a simple little oversight. Because especially if you're looking at it for so long, you can just sort of, it all just meld into one. So you just need to, I would give it, check this markers guide and just go through it objectively before you submit it, just to make sure you've got everything. Okay, so as you can see here, prioritize 3 actions with justifications for each. Okay, so I think I may have done 1. I didn't think I did all 3. So first you need to do the moral, legal, and financial arguments. It's a bit unclear here, but basically what they're looking for is why do we care? So why are we even doing all these actions? So what's the moral reason? So you can put a little blurb in there if you wanted to. But basically what they're looking for, I would even highlight the words moral, financial, and legal as you're going through this. So basically the arguments as to why you should do all your actions that you've identified. So this is the first part of your book, first part of the course that you did on day 1. It's all that information is there available to you. Try and make it a little bit personable to your organization. So that's what I've tried to do here. So it's our duty to protect contractors, visitors, the public, and our own employees. Because it could impact their friends and families' lives. The expectations of society is that we don't want to be seen as a company that doesn't care about our employees, and we certainly don't want. I can't imagine people want to work for a company like that either. So, morally, we should want to do that. Financially, again, if you work for a government department, you should be talking about things like taxpayers' money and things like that, reputation and things like that. But basically, we're not a huge company, so basically the crux of what I'm saying here is that if we were hit by huge fines and huge payments for something really, really bad, we could potentially go out of business. So that's something we need to worry about. And how would that affect everyone that works there? That would dramatically affect everyone's livelihood. So, and then legal duties. Yeah. Oh, for the financial as well, if you remember as well, you got in your book direct and indirect costs. Make sure you mention that. Legal duties. So this is legally what we've got to do. So this is like legislation, regulations, all that sort of stuff. So this is all in your book. Very, very easy to do. If you just make sure I would 3 separate paragraphs and highlight the words. Just draws the marker's eye to it straight away and knows that you've hit the nail on the head. So if we go, that's moral legal arguments. Yes. Done. Okay, so by this point, we should have prioritized the actions that we've done. So these are the actions. If we scroll up here, so for this hazard, we've got 4 actions, etc. So I would go for something high risk, or something just that should be like a priority. And literally all I've done is copy and pasted that information like this, Control C, and I've literally put Control V into there. So this will correspond somewhere to one of the actions in part 2. So it'll be the Kosh one there. It's there, look. So don't put any extra information there. It has to be one action for each of these boxes. So you wouldn't normally do this in a real risk assessment. This is literally a case of you're justifying yourself. You're explaining to the marker why you've done what you've done. In a real risk assessment, you wouldn't be expected to do that. But so, yeah, just that's all you need to do. Don't put any extra information there. Don't put more than one. Don't put any extra information in than what you've done in part 2 because you'll just get referred straight away. Okay, specific legal arguments is so under Kosh and other regulations that are suitable, you need to explain why under regulations I need to do that. So you can literally Google control of hazardous substances regulations, familiarize yourself with those and then explain why legally we need to do that, why we need to do this, because if we don't, we'll be breaching this. Simple as that, really. So there's an example there for you to look at. Again, don't copy and paste this into your own because it'll get picked up by the software. And don't be just copy and pasting straight from a website either. You've got to put it into your own words. Okay, considerations for likelihood and severity. Now, this is a really tricky bit that a large percentage of people refer on. I would put these into 2 separate paragraphs. So basically we need to talk about the likelihood and severity and what we think those are. So you could have some sort of risk rating in there if you want, or you could literally just give your opinion and say it's high or it's low or it's very high or it's that kind of thing. And as well as doing that, we also need to hit these 4 bullet points here that we've been asked. So likelihood of injury is medium. If a staff member were to use the unlabeled product for something that was not intended on the products, so we've just all done those. We've talked about the likelihood, so we think it's medium, so it's not too high, not too low. Okay, number of staff affected. The number of staff at risk. We've talked about that. So a number of staff up to 50 in the office at any one time could mistake the chemicals as another product, such as hand sanitizer or desk cleaner. It could be something a lot more corrosive than that. The cleaners come every day to clean the office and use various products and could potentially use other unlabeled products in the area. So this is a widespread issue in the office. This is a new thing, this widespread thing. So you need to really make it clear that you're talking about it. So I'd not done that. So what I would do now is, having reviewed it with you guys while we're doing the video, I would maybe even bold it if I wanted to. But again, I wouldn't say that's essential, but you could do that if you wanted. So this is a new thing. So what it's actually asking is, if you've got a huge organization with 50 sites, thousands of employees, but you're only risk assessing one site, and this is a problem, do you think that is widespread across the whole organization to all the other 49 sites that you've got and thousands of people could be affected? Or do you think it's isolated to this actual building? So for me, we've only got one office. So I've put here's very widespread issue in the office. So yeah, it could be anywhere in that office, couldn't it? So I've answered the question, but not how maybe the question was intended because we're not a huge organization. But if you are, that's what it means. So you need to answer that question. If you don't, you'll get referred. How often is it carried out? I've answered that question by saying they come every day. And then when you talk about the severity, so here we will talk about types of injuries and ill health. So this would be a high severity if a staff member used a product thinking it was a recognizable domestic product, blah, blah, blah. It could inhale chemical burns, that kind of thing. And so basically we've talked about that. Just so we've explained how severe it is, and also we've talked a little bit about types of injuries as well. So I would put more, again, this is the minimum of what you should do. I would go into more detail on different types of injuries. I've even included in there disabilities, young people and pregnant women, because the markers like that kind of thing. It shows that you're looking at the types of people that might be harmed from a larger scope. But that's basically you need to make sure you're hitting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different points throughout this whole section. Okay, how effective the action is likely to be in controlling the risk. So this can be, some people do struggle with this one. So what I like to do is I like to just pretend that you've got a director or a senior member of staff, CEO, FCO, whoever it may be, come to talk to you, and they've read your risk assessment and they've looked at your actions and they've said, okay, Richard, so we're going to dispose of all these unlabeled cleaning products. So what's the intended impact of that then? Just throwing stuff away that costs money. So you're basically answering the questions. So our answer is the intended impact of this action is vital when controlling the risk. Hierarchy of control. When controlling risk, should always start with eliminating the risks if possible. By disposing of these unlabeled products as soon as possible, this would achieve this. Yeah, so we've answered that question now. So our director's asked that question, and I've said, that's the first thing you should do. We're going to get rid of it. Okay, justification of time. I mean, you could even put more information in there. It'll stop people from hurting themselves, and just maybe put it into your own words as to what the intended impacts it would be. But again, this is the minimum of what you should be doing. Justification of the time scale. So now that person has said, but you've put a day. Why a day? So because the markers are for some reason really upset about the phrase immediately as a time scale. So I've tried to sort of explain myself a little bit here, because that's what this whole section is for, is about you justifying yourself and explaining yourself, putting your opinion across. This should be done immediately, but for the purposes of this assessment, a timescale of 1 day was selected. This timescale is achievable as there are normal cleaning products that can be disposed of, and more suitable, correctly labeled alternatives could be quickly purchased for use by the cleaners. Yeah, nice and clear. Okay, I mean, if you wanted to as well, you could separate these out to make it even clearer. Whether you think the action will fully control the risk. This action will not fully control the risk. This action will remove the immediate risk, but further actions noted in section 2 for this hazard will prevent this from happening again in the future. I will maybe put the word hopefully in there. Okay, so that's the first one. So that's basically how you would do the justifications. So when I mentioned earlier in the risk assessment, try and keep it simple. It's because if you make it incredibly complicated, if you go for a really high risk hazard, like you could be someone working on a crane, or working at height in general, hot works, or something that needs like a permit for work, or a specialist contractor, you're going to make this part incredibly difficult for yourself. So just keep it nice and low, nice and simple, and then when you're doing your justifications and you're doing your likelihood and severity, and especially the legal argument, it just makes it a little bit easier to complete. So you do the same justification 3 and 2, exactly the same method for doing those two, and then we move on to section 4. But before we do that, we'll look back at our markers guide. Okay, have we done the moral, legal, and financial argument? So we're happy with it. Tick. Have we covered the likelihood and severity and consideration for each action? Yes. Description of how effective the action will be at controlling the risk? Yes. So far we've ticked all these. We're happy with it, and now we're going to move on to part 4. So part 4, we're going to ignore these word counts because they're just a guide. They're not, if you get to 100 words, you're not expected to start deleting things. Okay, planned review date. Basically, sometimes people trick on this because they start talking about action review periods and things like that. That's not what it means. It's basically a review of the whole risk assessment. You would expect to do that after 12 months. So you would put in there as part of the way that we do things. The date for the assessment to be completed is the 22nd of February. So that's when I did started doing this example. So the next review date will be 1 year on from then, unless there's an incident, accident, near miss, or significant change to organization or environment, then this assessment will need to be reviewed before then. That's really all the marker's looking for. You could say a year and then explain why you would do it quicker. If maybe you had a new member of staff that had, and maybe in a wheelchair, so there's different considerations that need to be done. from a DSE standpoint, access and egress. Have you got a ramp for that? Have you got disabled toilets? So a new risk assessment would have to be done just to make sure that you were able to accommodate that new member of staff, which you should have anyway. But it's one thing you would need to check and go through everything, and also it could be you could move buildings. Like for instance, from partnership is one of 3 units. What if we expanded and wanted to use that second unit? So we've got a whole new office, so that this would need to be done again. So that's what they're looking for. Okay, how the risk assessment findings will be communicated. This is really, really easy. So there's a whole section of communicating effectively. Even talks about it badly as well in the NG1 book. Just go back to that and have a quick read of it. Basically, or also think about in your organization how you do things. So what you're doing here is you've got a whole list of different actions and new ways of doing things that you're going to communicate to all staff. What's the most effective way of doing that? Is it getting line managers to talk to their staff in team meetings, email? Is it going to be taught by directors in a business update? But basically, everyone needs to know about it. So you need to think about different ways. You shouldn't just do one. You should do as many as you possibly can to make sure everyone's got all the information that they need. So you would do that. You just explain that basically. And then the very last one is, how will you follow up on the risk assessment to check the actions have been carried out? So this is about the actions. So what we've got now in part 2 is a whole host of different actions and timescales and people responsible. So it's not just health and safety. If you have a meeting in your business and there's 10 people in the meeting and they agree, a cohort of different actions, how will you monitor those? How will you keep an eye on those? How will you make sure they're all done as agreed? Because if not, they may just sit there forever and no one actually does anything. So do you follow that up with a weekly meeting to say, right, guys, how are we getting on with our actions? Do you have one person who manages it and contacts the other people to say, okay, so you've got 3 weeks left on this action. How is that going? Do you need some support? Or do you do both? Or do you have a program, like a computer program that keeps track of different things that you need to try and achieve? So either whatever you do as part of your business, it needs to go in there just to basically explain how you as a business will track those actions and make sure they're all completed as you said you're going to do in the risk assessment. And if not, why not? So that's basically it. So I hope they found that useful. So before we finish, we'll go back to our marking guide. Realistic review date given, reason for a date, how the risk assessment findings will be communicated, who will communicate them, and also how you will check up on them. So by this point, we should have gone through it and we've ticked everything and we're relatively happy with it. And if not, we can go back and make some changes and update things. And then when you're really, really happy with it, as per your email about your NG2 you get from the health and safety team, you would forward it to the team to upload for you. But if you've got any questions off the back of watching this video that you want to check, just get in touch with us at the health and safety team. Myself or the team will pick that up and have a discussion with you. But I hope you found that useful. Contact me if you need to. But thanks for your time. Thank you.